The story begins with the protagonist Alta, a young knight on the battlefield fighting monsters. The knight leading the group told his subordinates that there were too many creatures, so they would have to go and back up the squad leader. Alta said that wouldn't be necessary. The others looked at him, and one asked him to explain. As he struck the monster, Alta told them it was because the beast was his prey, and he cut it clean in two with his sword. The knights nearby cried out that it was incredible, and that this skill with the blade was exactly what had made Alta the youngest knight in the kingdom. The others joined him in finishing off the remaining monsters, and Alta admitted that the fight reminded him of his past life. He thought back to the world he had been reincarnated from, where he had been known as Rael, a man who had lived for nothing but the way of the sword. As he later explained, he had wandered that world to discover just how strong he could become, hiring himself out as a mercenary in countless wars and cutting down every foe until he earned the title of Sword Saint. He had no family and no friends, yet he had climbed to the very summit of his craft. That life, which should have ended quietly and alone, had instead taken an unexpected turn. After dying in his previous life, he was reborn into this world as Alta, drawing on the swordsmanship and magical knowledge he had carried over. He had served as a country knight for 2 years. Thanks to his hidden reserves of magic, his abilities had almost caught up to what they had been in his days as the Sword Saint. Now that he had a second life, he was determined to use his talents well and live more sensibly than before. This time, Alta intended to earn good money, enjoy himself, and look forward to a comfortable retirement. The knights then told him that the operation had been a success. Alta replied that they would head back to the royal capital. To himself, he reflected that the Galdia kingdom was his homeland, and that he served as one of the city's guardians within the Sirius Black Knights Order. This was his workplace. He went to report to his superior, Commander Lumiere, telling her that although wiping out the abnormally multiplying demonic beasts had left some of the squad injured, there had been no deaths. It had been a splendid performance. Alta thanked her, then asked whether he might receive a bonus for each kill. Lumiere asked if he had really been keeping count, and suggested that money shouldn't be his main concern. She wanted to know what he was planning to spend it on. Alta said he had nothing specific in mind, he was simply saving for something that might prove useful down the line. She pressed him on what a young man like him dreamed of, and what passions stirred in his heart. Alta answered that nothing in particular interested him. Merely swinging a sword, he explained, no longer stirred the hunger for strength he had once felt in his past life. In short, nothing much appealed to him, and he wondered whether it might be a kind of burnout. He still hadn't told anyone about his reincarnation. Alta added that he was young yet and meant to take things slowly. Lumiere accepted his view and said they could leave it at that. Even so, Alta turned the offer down and asked her instead for an assignment. She remarked that he was rather blunt, but said she liked that about him. She chuckled, and Alta privately thought that Lumiere was a slightly troublesome boss, though it was pleasant to be able to talk with her. She then told him she had the perfect job and handed him a note. Taking it, Alta asked whether it was a bodyguard mission. Lumiere explained that rumors were circulating, and that until they could confirm a certain person's safety, he would act as her escort. Alta questioned why a first officer should be assigned over a mere rumor. Lumiere answered that the work would be all the easier if it really was just a rumor, and that it paid double besides. Alta accepted and said they should go ahead with it. Pleased at how quickly he had agreed, she mentioned that she had already arranged the guards. As Alta left the office, he thought about earning twice the usual pay for what looked like an easy job. The scene moved to the Forum Academy, in its higher education department, where the students were greeting one another. When Iris arrived, they all stepped aside to make way for her. Many of these students came from noble houses, yet Iris stood apart. She was the only daughter of the Reinfeld family, one of the kingdom's 4 great noble houses, and she was also known as the Sword Saint Princess. The students were struck by her beauty, and simply being her classmate was a point of pride. One boy advised another not to even bother trying to speak to her. Another said that Iris was the most likely candidate to be the next monarch, and at only 15, it seemed some people really were born with everything. As they took their seats, Iris nudged Arya and asked whether she had dozed off again. She also thanked Arya for helping her with her morning practice. Arya promised she would always be there to support Iris whenever she was needed. Iris affectionately patted Arya's head, thinking how sweet she was, and thanked her once more. Iris then mentioned that there was a swordsmanship exam coming up, so it was good to give their shoulders a rest. Arya assured her that as long as she was there, everything would be fine. Iris acknowledged the support but said she still had a great deal of practice ahead of her. She was set on training until she became a swordsman who would lose to no one. The bell rang, and Alta walked in, telling everyone to take their seats. The students stared, wondering who he was. Arya couldn't help thinking that he looked like a child. Someone in the class joked that Alta must be somebody's little brother. Alta went to the teacher's desk and introduced himself, saying he would be their homeroom teacher for the day as well as their temporary kenjutsu instructor. He gave his name as Alta. The announcement left everyone stunned, and Iris, unable to hide her disbelief, cut in and told him to stop joking. She walked up to him and demanded to know how he could possibly call himself a kenjutsu instructor. She declared that she hadn't come to the academy to play with children, and other students voiced their agreement, finding it strange that a homeroom teacher should change within a single month. Iris had won the national kenjutsu tournament, which even included adult competitors, and her remarkable skill had earned her the nickname Sword Saint. She also, however, held an unbroken record for getting lost. One of the boys backed up her achievements. He pointed out that even their previous sword instructor had been beaten by Iris, and voiced his doubts that Alta was fit to teach. He even announced that he would take the matter up with the headmaster. In reply, Alta put a challenge to the class. He suggested a mock battle against him, and said that if he lost, he would walk out of the classroom. The setting shifted to the martial arts field, where Alta took the challenge and stood ready. The boy who had protested earlier insisted there was no need for Iris to fight on his behalf, since he alone was more than enough to handle Alta. He also asked whether Alta even knew what a mock sword was. Alta explained that a magical blade drew no blood when it cut, but still hurt on impact. A nearby student suggested they go easy on him, and Alta agreed. He proposed a deal. If any of them could land a single hit on him by the end of class, he would call them the winner. Alta then told all of them to come at him at once, since taking them on one by one would be too much bother. He skillfully sent several students tumbling, showing off his ability. Someone noted that there were 20 of them in total and asked what on earth was happening. Another suggested they ease up on him, and the rest agreed. Watching from a distance, Arya remarked to Iris that Alta really was strong. Iris agreed, admitting he was far stronger than their previous instructor. She then decided to step into the fight herself, ordering the other students to stand back while she dealt with him. The boy who had challenged Alta earlier said that now it would be a true contest, implying Alta wouldn't win so easily this time. Feeling the pressure, Alta said the remaining students would be next, and that time was running short, so they needed to hurry. Iris answered confidently that there was no problem, and apologized for having underestimated him. She claimed to have read through his techniques and was sure his childish tricks wouldn't work on her. Arya offered to help, but Iris declined, saying she was more than capable of handling Alta alone. She drew her sword and told him she was coming. As Iris pressed her attacks, Alta turned them aside with ease. She noticed that he had grown faster than before, yet she could find no opening to exploit, and she wondered how such a strong child had ever ended up in their kingdom. For all her efforts, Alta forced her back, then asked whether she now recognized his skill. Undeterred, Iris renewed her assault, and some of the other students cheered to see her pushing him. One remarked that the two of them were so fast he couldn't follow their movements at all. Another noticed something odd and pointed out that Alta was handling every one of Iris's strikes effortlessly. Alta acknowledged that circling to find his blind spot was the right idea, but noted it was difficult in such an open space. Just as Arya darted in, saying she would have a go, he slipped past her too. Iris told her to fall back, but Arya insisted that Iris couldn't manage alone, so they should attack together. They launched a combined assault, but at that very moment the bell rang to end the class. The students observed that even Iris had failed to beat Alta. With the period over, Alta held to his promise to serve as their homeroom teacher and temporary kenjutsu instructor, and asked whether anyone had questions or objections. Curious about his age, Iris asked how old he was, and Alta revealed that he would be turning 12 that year. Iris remarked that he really was very young, and that at his age he ought to be in the basic education department. Alta explained that this was his first job and urged them not to judge a book by its cover. He said he hoped they would all get along, and the class agreed. Reflecting on the situation, Alta realized his appearance might be a hurdle for a teacher, since some students would surely resist being taught by someone so young. Still, for the time being, he had successfully slipped inside the academy. Alta recalled Commander Lummire's earlier words about Iris being a candidate for the throne within the Knight's Order, and how she had wanted to assign Iris a bodyguard. He also remembered that Iris had refused the offer, claiming she was strong enough not to need one. Looking at her now, he thought that, just as Lummire had said, Iris saw herself as very strong, though perhaps not quite at the level of a sword saint. He suggested to the students that they all visit the first aid room, since they had taken a fair few hits in the mock battle. Then he turned to Iris and asked if she was all right. She replied that she hadn't even been touched by a sword. Alta took the answer in stride, though he couldn't help wondering whether she now disliked him. Iris, for her part, was lost in thought. She couldn't bear having lost in the mock battle. It had felt as though her sword had never once reached him. Perhaps, she mused, that was why people had begun calling her the Sword Saint. She wondered whether they hadn't been fighting seriously, and what might happen if Alta truly fought back and used magic. So she called out to him and asked him to fight her in earnest. Alta was caught off guard by the request, and asked what she meant, insisting they had already fought seriously earlier. Iris started to explain, but he cut her off, reminding her that she would be late for her next class and telling her to go. They both left the training area, and Alta reflected that this had been his first day as a temporary teacher. Later, OTZ, the head of the school year, came over to him. OTZ said that he taught enchantment, and that the principal had told him about a knight who had become a teacher for an undercover mission. Alta confirmed it, and Atsu's voice grew louder as he went on. OTZ revealed that he was talking about Iris, explaining that the previous Kenjutsu instructor had been unable to teach her anything. He lamented the situation, saying that a candidate for the throne deserved a capable protector like Alta. Alta apologized for any trouble his being there might cause. OTZ reassured him that he meant no harm and simply found the idea of an undercover mission fascinating. Still taken aback by the man's booming voice, Alta remarked on how loud it was. OTZ then said that Alta would surely get on well with the students, to which Alta replied that he believed so, and joked that he might have crushed their spirits a little. As he walked into the classroom, several of the girls swarmed him with questions, asking about where he came from, his hobbies, and his height. One praised his strength, while another pointed out that he hadn't actually beaten them. Yet another invited him to hang out after class. Alta found himself wondering whether he was getting along a little too well with them. Watching the boys in the class, Alta sensed a flicker of jealousy among them. As he left, he asked the students to save their questions for the next day. He couldn't shake the feeling that their reactions weren't quite what he had expected. Then again, he was only a temporary teacher, so he supposed it was fine. There was, however, one troublemaker still to deal with. Iris approached him, still asking for a serious match. Alta started to walk away, and Iris hurried after him, pleading with him to wait. He reminded her that they had already fought seriously in the mock battle. He was, in truth, impressed by her strength, just as one would expect from the Sword Saint Princess. Iris, though, didn't want to be called by that title. She insisted on dueling him using enchantments, and Alta felt the whole situation growing more tangled than he had bargained for. He told her that duels between teachers and students simply weren't allowed, and grew uneasy about the trouble that might be brewing, especially with a sore loser like Iris, whom he had no wish to upset further. She stepped in front of him and earnestly offered to help him with anything he needed, whatever it was. Uncomfortable with the idea, Alta told her it wasn't appropriate for a girl to make such offers, and warned that if he asked her to do something unpleasant, what would she do then? Iris blushed at that, and Alta realized his ploy had worked. He told her that if she understood, then the matter was settled. Iris, however, replied that she didn't mind even if he asked her to do something unpleasant. She was prepared enough to handle it. Alta took out a notebook-like object and lightly tapped it against her head, telling her that what she had wasn't resolve but plain stubbornness. He apologized for snapping at her, but advised her not to make such offers so lightly. Embarrassed, Iris insisted that she hadn't said it lightly at all. Alta found the whole thing a headache, sensing it wouldn't be easily resolved. So he put a challenge to her. If she could catch him within 30 minutes, they would have their serious fight. But if she couldn't, she would have to give it up. Iris accepted at once, and without wasting a moment, Alta leapt out of the window, announcing that he would be running from her across the school grounds. He admitted it might look childish, but he simply couldn't let her win. As he ran, he considered using his body enhancement magic. Even in a child's body, he could draw on physical strength far beyond an adult's, thanks to the power of his past life as the Sword Saint. Refusing to back down, Iris took off after him, vowing not to let him escape. Alta realized she was no slouch and that he couldn't afford to underestimate her. And so the chase began. As the two of them raced across the school grounds, Iris found herself in an unfamiliar part of the campus and soon lost her bearings. She told herself there was still time to catch him and that there had to be a way. Deciding to retrace her steps, she turned to head back the way she had come. Before she could, however, something struck her shoulder from the side. Iris knew at once that it hadn't been Alta. As she spun to face her attacker, a band of assassins stepped out, sneering that she was finally alone. A paralyzing poison began to spread through her body. Her shoulder bled, and she could barely move. The assassins gloated that she could no longer use her hands, and Iris collapsed to the ground, frozen by the poison. Even then, she refused to accept her fate, and found the strength to declare that she would not die in a place like this. The assassins taunted her, mocking that the all-powerful Sword Saint Princess looked like nothing more than a ragged little girl. Just then Alta arrived, and Iris asked if it was him. He confirmed that it was. The enemies were surprised, noting that he looked like a small child. Iris warned him that these people were her foes and told him to fall back. Alta, however, suggested it might be a disguised student and advised Iris to close her eyes if she wasn't ready for what came next. The assassins jeered that some reinforcement he was, asking what he could possibly do without a weapon. The tension mounted. Then, in a flash, Alta beheaded one of them, leaving Iris stunned at the speed of the strike. She hadn't even seen a weapon, which led her to suspect it was his enchantment at work. One of the remaining attackers, named Azuma, signaled the others to flee, and they did. Azuma observed that Alta wasn't giving chase. Alta answered that he would hunt them down if he had to. Among the fleeing men, one had differently colored hair and gave off a murderous aura. Alta realized that Azuma's presence had drawn his attention to this lone straggler, hinting at the chance of further reinforcements, and he suspected they were a band of professional killers. Thinking it over, Alta realized they had been targeted far sooner than expected, which confirmed Commander Lumire's worries. He had at first taken the bodyguard role as a mere formality, but clearly someone genuinely wanted Iris dead. Azuma removed his mask, revealing his face. He said he was glad of the chance to face the Sword Saint Princess in battle, even though he had only managed to bring down a single girl. He found the fight a touch pointless, yet counted himself lucky. Casting off the black clothing he wore, he introduced himself as Azuma. He named himself a member of the Kenkish and asked whether Alta knew of them. Iris broke in, saying there was hardly anyone who hadn't heard of that wicked group. She described them as a mercenary clan willing to kill anyone, regardless of rank, so long as the price was right. Azuma confirmed that the description was accurate. Iris noted that they had finally managed to slip into the country. Azuma then told her to stay where she was and turned his attention to Alta, musing over how he would fight such a young child, and reflecting that in battle people either talked or died. Even with his eyes shut, he said, he could still feel the fear of death. Alta replied that he didn't share Azuma's delight in it. Azuma observed that things were getting better and that he wished the moment could last forever, but he could hold back no longer. He suddenly attacked, and Alta answered with a counter using his hand. Their clash erupted in an explosion, and once again Iris couldn't see Alta's sword strike. Azuma realized it had been an invisible attack, and Alta was surprised anyone could perceive it. The technique was known as the invisible blade, a slash of wind sent flying at one's opponent. a skill he had honed in his past life. Azuma revealed that he, too, was a wind user and expressed his amazement at facing a practitioner of the Saint Sword's kenjutsu. He found Alta a truly intriguing and unusual child. Their fight went on, both of them wielding wind magic, while Iris watched in wonder as they parried each other's attacks without so much as moving. Azuma decided to treat the encounter as a formal duel. In the thick of it, however, Alta landed a decisive blow to his chest. Gasping, Azuma asked his name, and Alta told him it was Alta. Azuma expressed his respect, admitting he was glad he hadn't let himself stagnate back in the East. He confessed that he felt unexpectedly elated at the thought of dying in that moment, and with those words, he passed away on the field. Reflecting on the battle, Alta noted that it had been a long while since he had been so absorbed in a fight. He admitted to feeling his usual nerves. Going to Iris, he apologized for killing the two enemies in front of her, and said he hoped she now understood how strong he was. He held out his hand, assuring her that the attackers were long gone. Iris thanked him and took his hand. Alta thought to himself that, even after seeing such a battle, she was still fixated on the same thing. The scene returned to the school, where Alta told Iris that he had finished handling the situation. He said he was relieved she hadn't been seriously hurt, and that she hadn't relied on her own power alone to fend off the enemies. As her bodyguard, he felt he needed to reflect on how things had gone. He then sat down and apologized to her, admitting that he had frightened her. Iris assured him she was fine, acknowledging that she tended to get worked up in such moments, and that he seemed used to it. Alta replied that he had been born in a very dangerous place, hinting that he had grown up in a harsh environment. Iris then asked him again whether he would fight her seriously, since she had managed to catch him. Alta recalled his promise and wondered why she wanted to fight him at all. He weighed the possible fallout of such a battle, considering that it might interfere with the mission Lumiere had given him, and realized he needed a good excuse to refuse. Standing firm, Iris explained that while her first goal had been to graduate, as she had promised her mother, she now hoped to become a knight once she finished her studies. Alta accepted her decision and said it was a noble path. Even though she was expected to one day rule, he welcomed her wish to become a knight instead. Iris shared her dream with him, explaining that she had sharpened her skills and built an undefeated record, yet for all her wins she hadn't felt herself growing stronger. With his arrival at the academy, she saw a real chance to improve, and she was determined not to waste it. Alta understood that she knew her own limits and wanted to test herself against him. Out of respect for her wishes, and not wanting to slight a future colleague, he agreed. Iris asked when they could have the match. Alta suggested they not fix a time, since deciding the outcome of their fight could take a while and might become a nuisance. Instead, he proposed they meet up after class as they had earlier, so as not to tip off the other students, who had no idea of their plans. Iris answered that if it meant she could grow stronger, she agreed to their practice duel using enchantment. Alta said he was glad to help her improve, since it would not only assist him as her bodyguard but also aid her growth. He realized his responsibilities were expanding, but that this was only natural given the circumstances. As Iris left the room, Alta thought the arrangement suited him perfectly. He stepped out and saw her heading downstairs, then mentioned that he, too, would be using a round-the-clock enchantment. Iris asked what he meant, and he demonstrated it for her, showing that it was a skill of his. The scene shifted to the spot where Alta had killed the two enemies. A man remarked that if they kept using barriers of such strength, there would be no more intruders. The Kenkish, it seemed, were taking matters seriously. Alta then decided to head into town for a while, and the man asked where he was going. Alta simply said he was off to the town. Arriving at a pub, he found Lumiere, who said she hadn't needed to collect the report in person, but had come because of how serious the incident was. She bought him a drink, and he recalled their first mission, when he had been hard at work while she enjoyed her drink. Lumiere then asked for a report on Iris. Alta said he was thankful to be on good terms with her, and revealed that he had given her an item to wear, one enchanted with a detection spell. This would let him know her whereabouts at all times and reach her within 10 minutes should an enemy attack. Lumiere appreciated the initiative but warned him not to misuse the ability. Alta assured her he had no such intention. He then asked about the progress of the investigation into the attackers. Lumiere told him about the man in glasses, who had a criminal record with loose ends both at home and abroad. She added that the others who had escaped were likely part of the same group, but that the real worry was Azuma, who was infamous for causing havoc around the world. She had gathered a great deal of information on the members' service records and histories, and noted that there was a bounty on the head of each one in their unconventional band of warmongers. Alta was intrigued by the mention of bounties, but Lumiere cautioned him not to focus solely on the money. She told him it was common for some bounty hunters to work together, and that it was fair to assume more members of the Kenkish were still in the royal city. Alta agreed that the situation was indeed serious. He took a sip of his drink and reflected that he had underestimated them by defeating one of their number without first gathering information. Now a small team from the Sirius Black Knights was tracking a man who had escaped, someone of the same rank as Alta, the first officer known as the Blue Sword. Alta admitted he had never actually met him, despite crossing paths on many missions. Lumiere remarked that she had always let Alta do things his own way. Alta explained that, when infiltrating the school, it was necessary to keep his real identity rather than use an alias. Lumiere suggested that once the mission was over, the two of them should have a drink together. She also mentioned that the Blue Sword, though young, was a very capable man, and asked for Alta's thoughts. Alta said he looked forward to it, but pointed out that he was underage and couldn't drink. Lumiere playfully asked why he was so insistent and urged him to have one anyway. Alta, in turn, jokingly suggested that perhaps the commander should be the one showing some restraint. Lumiere informed him that, unfortunately, they had found no evidence linking the mastermind behind the plot to the attempt on Iris's life. As a result, Alta would need to keep guarding her. He thought about the abilities of Roger and the Blue Sword, and concluded that all they could do for now was wait for clues to surface. The scene then shifted to the outskirts of the royal city, where the enemies had holed up in an old house. Their leader expressed regret that Azuma had died, but one of them brushed it off, saying that Azuma had set out to kill Iris and had only brought about his own end. Another member suggested they leave, but the leader cut him down on the spot, declaring that assassins who couldn't fight were useless, and that they needed only true members of the Kenkish. The older Kenkish members scolded the others, reminding them that it was forbidden for their kind to harm one another while on a job. The younger one asked what their next move should be. The woman among them remarked that it seemed Azuma hadn't lost to Iris at all, but had been defeated by a child who was Iris's instructor. The adult member noted that things were getting more interesting and said he wanted to fight the child with his sashi, a type of weapon. Their leader, referred to as the boss, agreed, but said there was something they needed to take care of first. Just then the knights arrived, led by the Blue Sword. He said they had been tracking the Kenkish and clearing out their hideouts. Recognizing the boss, he indicated that he wouldn't kill them unless they started a fight, but asked that the boss come along with them. The young assassin praised the Blue Sword's bold words. The woman then displayed her unique sword technique, which had no visible blade, and cut down all the knights except the Blue Sword. The adult assassin expressed confusion at her actions, but she insisted it hadn't been needless killing. He decided to leave, and when the Blue Sword tried to stop him, he turned and attacked, suggesting they have a little fun. The woman then revealed that the adult assassin had been their lead, but that they no longer needed him. The boss explained that their organization was made up of people who loved to kill, so they should simply let him do as he pleased. As the scene shifted to the school the next day, Iris and all the students were practicing swordsmanship. One of the girls remarked on how cool Iris looked, and another wondered if she could use a one-handed sword as well. Alta reminded them to focus on their training, and a girl noted that it was a perk for nobles to have knights to protect them. A boy shot back that even if he became a knight, he wouldn't protect her. Alta reflected that the Kenkish attack had been kept quiet, and things seemed relatively calm for now. Watching the students, he noticed that many of them aspired to become nobles, and had some knowledge of the Kenkish. At the national school level, however, Iris, destined to be the next ruler, wasn't very approachable to her classmates. With the previous day's crisis behind her, she could now concentrate on her lessons. Alta noticed she seemed distracted and reminded her to pay attention. Just then Arya came over and asked him for a duel, which caught the attention of the rest of the class. Alta was surprised, since it was the first time she had spoken to him. He knew very little about her, only that she often seemed sleepy and was always at Iris's side. Still, he didn't mind taking the challenge, as the idea of a duel interested him. Iris came over to ask what had gotten into Arya, and Alta explained that their mock battle on the first day had been cut short by the bell, so he was happy to oblige. Arya was thrilled at the prospect, though Iris pointed out that she had already dueled him earlier. With everyone ready, the two prepared, and Arya drew her sword. Alta thought to himself that it took fine magical control to send an equal flow of power into a mock sword. Arya was using exactly that technique, and she was the only one at the academy who could. He then told her to attack whenever she liked. She struck, but Alta dodged by the narrowest margin. He countered, and she dodged as well. Watching them, the other students said that Arya moved so fast she seemed like a cat, and they could scarcely believe how quickly she went. Alta thought that she was carefully hunting for an opening, and that she was clearly skilled. Then she stopped and asked whether something was wrong. She said she had tried a few different things, but felt it was better to fight in the usual way. She came at him again, and Alta noticed she had increased her speed even further. She landed a flurry of strikes, and he realized she was fast enough that he had to keep some distance between them. He was impressed by how good she was in battle, sensing in her a wealth of combat experience. She probably wouldn't even fall short of Azuma, he thought. He went on to say that the fight was going nowhere and that he had already confirmed her ability. With that, he announced it was time to stop. She didn't, however, and Alta had to take hold of her hand, telling her again that he had said to stop. Arya finally halted and thanked him, acknowledging that he was strong. Alta replied that she was the one to talk. The students all applauded, and Arya went over to Iris and asked if she had watched the fight. Iris said she had, and thought Arya had been truly amazing, though she wondered why Arya had wanted to fight at all, since she knew her friend wasn't interested in dueling anyone but her. Iris paused, and while stroking Arya's hair, asked what had prompted it. Watching them, Alta thought that Arya, too, somehow wanted to get back into Iris's good graces. He found that rather endearing, and was glad she hadn't tried to undermine him out of jealousy. Alta then told the students it was time to get back to practice, and, glancing at the two of them, added that they were exceptions and should keep improving at their own pace. One girl said it was a little discouraging to hear him say that. After a while, the school day ended, and a teacher thanked everyone for their hard work. Alta remarked that his job was finally done. Then Iris called out to him, explaining that she hadn't worn her uniform so as not to raise suspicion, and that she had also prepared herself for the mock sword. The pair headed to the forest, where Alta said they had until sunset, but should take it easy. Iris replied that she would be in his care. Alta said that first he wanted to see her abilities. She asked whether that was about the fight, and Alta noted that her blood rushed to her head very quickly. Iris answered that it wasn't about a fight, but something she wanted to ask of him. Alta wondered what the other students would think if they saw the two of them together out here. Even so, he told Iris to keep their private training a secret, and she agreed. He then told her to watch him and see whether she could perceive anything. He swung his sword, and Iris said she could see it. When he asked her what she had seen, she admitted she couldn't make it out properly, and probably wouldn't be able to defend against it. Alta appreciated her honesty, and noted that she had already grasped how to wield her blade for the speed needed to fend off his attacks. Iris looked puzzled, and Alta asked if she remembered Azuma's swordsmanship. From it, he could tell there was no real gap between Iris's potential and Azuma's. He extended his hand. She said it was the invisible blade. Alta replied that if Azuma could master his kenjutsu, there was no reason Iris couldn't do the same. Iris voiced her doubt, saying she couldn't believe in something she couldn't see and couldn't defend against an attack she couldn't perceive. So Alta set her a challenge. He stepped up to a tree, and some leaves drifted down from it. He then cut those leaves with his sword without actually looking at them. Astonished, Iris asked whether he had truly cut them without seeing. Alta confirmed it, explaining that just as she had sensed the killing intent and detected the dagger aimed at her shoulder, it was all a matter of the sixth sense. This was the very technique Azuma had used to counter his invisible blade. Alta assured her that once she could use this sense, there would be no problem at all. He added that the leaves themselves carried no killing intent and admitted the task would be difficult, but said that was exactly why she should practice and attempt it. Iris went up to a tree, closed her eyes and swung, but cut no leaves. Alta told her it was a good attempt, though she had missed. He reassured her there was no need to feel discouraged, since the skill couldn't be mastered quickly. He stressed, however, that if she couldn't learn it, another duel with him would be pointless, and suggested she try first to lock onto the leaves. Iris said she would try. The scene shifts to nighttime, with Alta reflecting that several days had passed in Iris's training and in his role as her bodyguard at the academy. Walking alone, he noted that there was no trouble with the protective barrier and that the night was calm. Suddenly, he spotted Lumiere and went over, asking why she had come to the academy. She seemed barely conscious and answered that she wouldn't want him to lower the academy's barrier. Alta realized the situation had taken a turn for the worse. Lumiere explained that on the outskirts of the royal capital, in a distant church, the bodies of a pursuit party led by the Blue Sword, Beltrasso, had been found. The scene then moved to a room at the academy where Alta, Lumiere, and a senior knight were gathered. Lumiere didn't seem to be in good spirits, so Alta asked if everything was all right. She explained that they had found the bodies of 9 members of the pursuit party in an abandoned building. The investigation team hadn't yet confirmed whether the rest were alive or dead, so they had all turned back. At the site, they had found signs that Bell had fought to the very end, but no sign that the enemy had taken any wounds. The knight suggested that this implied something, and Alta concluded that the pursuit party had been overwhelmed. He asked Lumiere if that was what she was trying to tell him, since it would mean their opponents were even stronger than Azuma. She confirmed it, and Alta understood that this must be hard on her, given how deeply she cared for her subordinates, a feeling he himself could understand. Lumiere set an object on the table and explained that it was something Bell had left behind, a voice recording artifact that could capture conversations. The recording revealed that 3 members of the swordsman gang had been involved: the man who led them, the woman who had attacked some knights, and the man who had killed Bell. The third was on his way to the academy, and they had been unable to trace his approach. The one piece of good news was that only one of them was coming, and it would fall to Lumiere and Alta to face him. Alta called over the knight who was present, thinking to himself that they were knights through and through. Lumiere emphasized that this was the situation they faced, so Roger would have to cooperate with them. She instructed him that if a fight broke out beyond the barrier, all personnel should stay off campus. Roger assured them he understood. Alta told him to take it easy, since he himself was in charge of the night patrols and would contact Roger if anything unusual happened. Lumiere teased Alta that he was just after the overtime pay. Alta jokingly agreed and promised to give her a full statement of his hours. The scene shifted to a few days later at the academy. Alta reflected that some days had passed without any attack from the swordsman gang. It had been a week since he had set Iris her assignment. Alta was in the forest with Iris as she practiced her sword training. She could now faintly sense the leaves, but still couldn't leave a single scratch on them. Yet she was determined and in no mood to give up. Watching her, Alta thought that, although he had expected progress to take time, she hadn't yet managed to cut even one leaf. Her current level was far from enough to defend herself against the swordsman gang. He wondered whether it might be more effective to reveal his true identity as a knight and lay out the reality for her. He worried, though, that if he did, Iris might expel him from the school given her hot-headed nature, and might even try to handle the matter on her own, which would be a hassle. So he decided it was better to follow Lumiere's orders, with Iris's training taking priority. He went over to Iris and asked whether she was pushing herself too hard. She looked up at him, and he went on, saying it was good that she put effort into her training every morning, but that he had heard she was nodding off in her other classes. Iris assured him she would be more careful, stressing that her morning training with Arya wasn't reckless, but real practice. Alta understood and suggested they take a break for now. Iris, however, said she wanted to keep going. So Alta proposed changing the approach, suggesting they go have tea with Arya, and gestured behind a tree. Arya then stepped out and remarked that he had finally noticed her. Iris asked why she was there, and Arya explained that she had noticed a change in Iris lately, since she hadn't been training with her. Iris apologized for her absence and asked Alta to teach her a little more. Arya accepted this, and Alta realized she had been trailing them for a week. He suggested they head to the dining hall, where they could continue talking. He thought it would do no harm, would give Iris a change of pace, and would keep Arya from asking him for a deal out of jealousy. At the dining hall, Arya commented that Alta really was strong, a fact that justified his becoming Iris's mentor. She decided to join them, and both Alta and Iris agreed to it. They were surprised, and when they looked at Alta, he assured them it hadn't been his doing. Arya came over and reassured him that it was all right. Iris chimed in, asking her friend to give it a rest. The two agreed that it was fine, but asked that they keep it a secret from the other students. Arya took Iris's hand and declared that it would be their secret. Alta then suggested they call it a day. Arya agreed, but Iris didn't seem entirely pleased, saying reluctantly that if Alta thought it was fine, then it was. Arya told her to wait and see, and then cut a leaf without looking. Stunned, Iris asked if she could really do that. Arya answered casually, asking if it was that surprising, and Iris conceded that she understood. Alta noticed that Arya hadn't used a hidden weapon she had kept concealed during the earlier instruction. She remained a mystery in many ways, and for some reason her identity was vouched for by the Reinfeld family. Alta guessed that perhaps she had joined them to help Iris grow more quickly. As they reached the academy, Iris asked Alta why he hadn't joined them for tea. He replied that he was going to sleep, and Iris pointed out that the sun hadn't even set. Arya teased him that he really was a child, but he simply said he was busy. Walking alone, Alta thought that thanks to the strict curfew, no one was out at night. Then, all at once, he spotted a man dressed in black. The man shattered a stone and warned Alta that if he didn't want to share its fate, he should hand over the person who had killed Azuma. He asked whether Alta, the supposed teacher, was the one who had killed Azuma, and whether he really was just a brat. Alta suggested that perhaps the man had broken straight through the barrier from the front. The man said he had been worried Alta might flee the school before it was too late, but that he counted himself lucky to find him there. He introduced himself as Folt, a member of the swordsman gang who had come to kill both Alta and Iris. Folt ordered him to draw his sword, and Alta decided to pretend to do so. Folt noticed, however, that Alta hadn't actually drawn anything. Alta apologized for the deception. Folt then drew his own weapon, and Alta asked whether that was meant to be a sword. Folt replied that he would deal with Alta first and then kill the Sword Saint Princess, and demanded to know where she was. Alta apologized again, telling Folt that boys weren't allowed in the girls' dormitories. Folt scoffed at the response and warned him not to try to outdo him. Realizing that Folt's weapon could stretch out, Alta decided that since keeping his distance was useless, he would have to fight up close. Folt's blade extended enormously, and he revealed that it wasn't merely a lengthening blade, but the centipede. Alta introduced himself in turn and declared that he would now fight with the Shui household's heirloom, the blue shell sword. Folt found the whole thing entertaining and launched another attack, which Alta turned aside with his sword. Folt confidently insisted it was useless, and Alta realized he couldn't get any closer to a man who was surprisingly cautious. Folt explained that trying to cut the blade thread was pointless, since it was made from the hair of the strongest kind of monster and reinforced with his magic to make it harder still. Alta knew this would take some time. Folt announced that he would speed things up, extending the blade even further. Alta privately thought what a nasty weapon it was. He also grumbled to himself that they would dock his pay for the repairs it would need. Folt, meanwhile, was steadily forcing him back. Alta apologized to him, but assured him that he wouldn't land a hit. Folt warned him not to play games, but Alta had a plan. He wanted Folt to grow more aggressive. Seizing his moment, Alta swiftly cut Folt's hand, shocking him. Folt demanded to know how he dared, and then suddenly stopped moving. Folt realized there was no way Alta had cut the thread itself. Alta explained that his sword carried a magical effect, including an anti-magic poison. He clarified that since Folt's blade moved only because his magic flowed through it, every time Alta's sword struck it built up a counterfeit toxin that neutralized magic, leaving the blade unable to move. It had taken a while, since Folt's blade was so exceptionally long, but Alta had finally disabled it. He was eager to ask Folt all about the swordsman gang. Before he could go on, Alta told Folt he was under arrest. Folt observed that he sounded like a knight, but Alta cut him off, pointing out that he had lost an arm. Folt defiantly insisted that he hadn't lost yet. As they spoke, a third person suddenly appeared, drawing Alta's attention. After Folt and the newcomer fled, Alta reflected that they must have escaped, perhaps even killing to keep someone quiet. He was left wondering who it was they had come to rescue, and why that person was so hated as to need saving. Alta briefly thought about pursuing them, but realized there might be more than one enemy, so he couldn't put too much distance between himself and Iris. He then asked Iris what she was doing there, since leaving the dorms at night wasn't allowed. She explained that she wanted to make up for the training time lost that afternoon, and asked whether he was a knight. He confirmed it, and revealed that he was the rumored youngest knight from 2 years before, currently working undercover as her bodyguard at the academy. Iris was surprised, and remarked that the academy must have known as well. She also noted that the assassination case was still ongoing, and that she was the only one who hadn't known about it. Alta apologized for not having been able to share the information with her earlier. Iris reassured him that it was fine, since he had only been doing his job and she was the target of the swordsman gang, though she added that she didn't really need a bodyguard. Alta started to reply, but she cut him off, saying that Belle had died protecting her. Alta was surprised she knew Belle, and explained that he had fought against him in the final round of a Kenjutsu tournament 10 years earlier, when he was just a child. Iris said she had heard that Belle had become a knight and later a first-class officer, but had lost that tournament. Alta asked why she was so against having a bodyguard, but Iris simply stood up. Wondering if something was wrong, Alta thought he might learn the reason if he asked now. Iris explained that she wanted to be like her father, a protector. Alta acknowledged that he had never personally met the man, but knew that he had been the previous commander of the Sirius Black Knights Order. Iris went on, saying that her father, as head of the family and above all as a knight, had been a protector of his people. To carry on his will, she was determined to lose to no one. She declared that if she was the swordsman gang's target, she would face them head-on, and that she didn't mind if Alta came along to help bring the gang down. Alta was quietly impressed by her resolve, especially given that she was only about 15. It was clear why she was considered a candidate for the crown. Still, he couldn't shake a sense of looming danger and decided to confirm something. He mentioned that, as far as he knew, the assassin who had killed Iris's father still hadn't been caught. He pointed out that the reason she wanted to grow stronger was to take revenge on that killer. Iris confirmed that the desire for revenge had taken root when she was just 5 years old. She used to love practicing swordsmanship with her father after his duties were done. Being praised for her talent with the sword had been a cherished memory, she said, and her father, as the kingdom's strongest knight, had been a figure of pride and admiration. One day, when she was 5, she had called for him but heard a voice from the backyard. Despite her fear, she had gone to check on him, thinking of how strong he was, and when she reached him, she called out. Iris recounted the tragic memory. Her father had looked at her, and suddenly his blood had splattered across her face as he died. The enemy had remarked that her father had let his guard down to protect her, and how dull that was. He had asked Iris to entertain him in her father's place next time, leaving her in tears. Back in the present, she admitted that she couldn't recall the face of the man who had killed him, and that they still didn't know who the killer was or where he had gone, since it had been an incident from 10 years ago. Even so, she couldn't give up her goal of becoming a knight and surpassing her father. She asked Alta whether it was right or wrong to seek revenge for him. Alta realized he wasn't good at reading people's feelings, and hadn't grasped the depth of what Iris had been carrying. He doubted he would ever fully understand it. Even so, he made her a promise to train her, even though he couldn't teach her a great deal. He told her it was all right to seek revenge if that was what she truly wanted. Iris asked whether it really was. Alta answered that it was, explaining that as a knight one needed a reason to grow stronger, whatever that reason might be. He added that protecting something as a knight and growing stronger in pursuit of revenge were both valid motivations. Iris sensed that Alta might be against her wish for vengeance, and he acknowledged it, suggesting that deep down she herself might feel it was wrong. He warned her that hesitation could stunt her growth and leave her disgusted with herself for wanting strength solely for revenge. That hesitation, he believed, could unconsciously affect her swordplay. Iris then asked whether she should simply abandon her wish for revenge. Alta remarked that it sounded as though she was trying to set it aside, but said the choice was ultimately hers. He stressed that the power to grow stronger should be poured out with all her might for a reason, and that this was his point. As her teacher, he advised her against swinging her sword for revenge alone. Gripping her blade, Iris declared that she would use it to protect people. Alta reflected that she had something she had wanted to talk through, and that she had now let go of her doubts. He realized he was still rather new to being a teacher. He then asked her what she wanted to do now. She replied that she had no intention of running away, which was why she would stay at the academy. Alta told her that he, too, would remain, but as her instructor rather than her bodyguard. He pointed out that she was still inexperienced in dealing with a swordsman gang and would need his guidance. Iris agreed, and Alta suggested they continue their training. As they walked, she asked him why he swung his sword. Alta replied that he did it because he wanted to live an easy life. Iris chuckled, saying she understood it was a joke. She said that if she could become as strong as him for such a reason, life wouldn't be too hard. Alta playfully called her childish, which she denied. His thoughts turned to the remaining members of the swordsman gang, and to the fact that, as expected, the incident could no longer be kept quiet. He hoped things would turn out well for them, given that they were only one rank away from a potentially dangerous situation. The scene shifted to one of the swordsman gang's members on the run, only to be surrounded on all sides by Lamire and a group of knights. Lamire ordered the intruder not to move. The woman from the enemy group acknowledged her and drew a sword that appeared to have no blade. Lamire identified the group as the Fist Maiden, the same one that had killed her former subordinate. The woman said she didn't care for feudal squabbles, but found causing a commotion troublesome. She then attacked the knights and leapt onto a nearby house. Lamire warned the knights not to give chase. If the woman ran wild with that sword in the middle of the city, she cautioned, the damage would be enormous. She instructed them to report whether any civilians had been hurt, and one of the knights confirmed there were no casualties. The next day, the school was closed, as the public had become aware of the swordsman gang's attack. The students were worried about Iris, and one of them asked the teacher how she was. The teacher reassured them that she was fine, and all the students were sent home. From a building, Iris, Alta, and Arya watched them leave. Iris told Arya that she needed to go home, but Arya refused, unwilling to leave her alone with someone who had lied to them. Alta noted that Arya, too, had apparently worked out that he was a knight. Iris apologized, explaining that Arya had forced her to reveal everything, and asked whether she had done something wrong. Alta reassured her that it was fine, and that he had expected this the moment Arya learned his true identity. Arya sided with Iris, declaring her intention to stay by her side. Iris said they might be rushing things, but she wanted to begin their training. Arya asked whether Iris could cut a leaf, and Iris answered that she had caught up to her in that skill. Arya suggested a duel, and Alta backed the idea, mentioning that the pair used to spar every day when he wasn't around. He was curious, too, to see how they would fare. The pair readied themselves on the ground, and Arya opened with an attack on Iris. The fight began, and at one point Arya threw a knife, certain it would clinch her victory. Iris managed to deflect it with her sword, however, surprising Arya, who had thought it would be the winning move. In the course of the fight, Iris brought her sword to Arya's neck and claimed victory. Arya conceded the win, then touched Iris's head and said she had grown a little stronger. Embarrassed, Iris asked her to stop. Arya refused, saying that she used to have this done for her, so now she wanted to do the same for Iris. Iris explained that the gesture had been meant to rouse her from a drowsy mood, but Arya wouldn't relent. Watching their training, Alta realized that the Sword Saint Princess already had the perfect training partner in Arya. Iris was growing skilled at reacting to attacks from her blind spots, the result of practicing the sixth sense. This skill was essential for serious combat and improved one's chances of survival, something important for a determined girl like her. Alta proposed they move on to the next stage of training, and both girls agreed. He set his sword down by a tree, and Arya asked whether he wasn't going to use it. He explained that he wouldn't, and that they would have to defend against his attacks. They would start at a basic speed, beginning with Iris. Arya watched as the two of them began to spar. Alta warned Iris that he would be picking up the pace and advised her to do her best to defend. She voiced her determination to try her hardest. The bout began, and Alta thought it was obvious that Iris held the advantage in a one-on-one fight. They moved on to the second speed, and Alta said he would go for a series of 5 strikes, which Iris agreed to defend against. After he brought his sword to her neck, he declared the round over, and Iris apologized for being unable to continue. Alta reassured her that it was enough for a start. Arya then said she would go next. She squared off against him while Iris watched. Alta decided to continue with another series of 5 strikes. He attacked Arya, but she blocked every one. Watching, Iris realized that her friend was deflecting all of them, once again proving her skill and pulling ahead of Iris in their training. Impressed that Arya could replicate his techniques after seeing them only once, Alta complimented her. He then proposed a challenge for both of them to come at him at the same time, and the two agreed. Alta assured them he could handle it and welcomed them to counter him. Arya suggested they attempt it, and Alta was pleased with the progress they were making. He found joy in watching those around him grow, and didn't mind being a teacher in the least, deciding that the role wasn't so bad after all. After the session, he advised Iris and Arya to take a break, and they planned to resume in an hour. Tired, Iris welcomed the rest. Alta enjoyed working with young people who were eager to grow and improve. The scene then shifted to Lumire's room, where Alta asked whether her arm was all right. She replied that one more step and it might have been cut clean off, the price she paid for spending too much time at her desk. Alta suggested she might want to cut back on drinking, but she refused. Lumire mentioned that they now knew the identities of the other 2 members of the swordsman gang, and showed a photo of the woman, Ephes, who had injured her arm and killed Folt. Ephes was the gang's first-ranked member, wielding a bladeless sword that made her a formidable opponent and the number 2 within the group. Alta acknowledged how dangerous the members were, especially Ephes and Adil, who posed serious threats despite their very different fighting styles. Ephes, with her bladeless sword, had a mysterious and unpredictable technique that even Lumire couldn't fully understand. Adil, the gang's leader, had a background as a battle-hardened mercenary and was reckoned the strongest of them all. Alta expressed his astonishment that such a fearsome group would target a 15-year-old girl, even one who was a candidate for the throne. It seemed an excessive and relentless pursuit for someone so young.